Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News with Big Hairy Chewy. Chewy, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Matthew. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, mate. I was gonna spend the whole night talking about my new caps, but more important things have happened. Much more important things than my hats. My hats from America got delivered today. I'm wearing one of them. You can see, I'm wearing one of them. But I can't talk about that.
You have to throw out an entire planned script
I
of what
know.
we're going to do.
A whole show.
We're going to do it live.
Yeah, it's a great clip, isn't it? Thanks for being with us, team. We are going to, often we kind of meander into our first story and we get going and we start talking, but we've got guests with us already in the waiting room. We're going to rip straight into this shortly. And we're going to talk about something we've been talking about a bit this week, but also some connections that we talked about last night that seem to have come back a little bit in today's story as well, Chewy, if you know what I'm saying, about like a Nazi element to some people who are doing some things. Literally, we talked about it last night, and there are some, I don't know if they're called rumors, unsubstantiated rumors, confirmed situations, allegations of the Julian Batchelor meetings having an element of Nazism in them as well.
Which is crazy when you think about it. When you just put on a series of private meetings for people that are interested in race relations in New Zealand in one form or another, and then in multiple cities, just literal Nazis turn up. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Before we get into it, let's say a huge thanks to our patrons. Thanks for being on board, team. We appreciate you to bits. Love the shit out of you. If you want to be involved with what we do, if you want to support us through Patreon, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. If you have participated in our merch drop from last month, well, actually it was last week, but for this month, they're in the printers at the moment getting done, hopefully be put out by the end of the week. And you should get your merch by the end of the week. And if you're new to us, if you're just joining us, we do a merch drop every single month. And often it's tied into political leanings, ideologies, and a good way to support the work that we're doing as well. So thanks, patrons. Thanks, you merch peoples. But I think it might be time. Look, as always, there's 3 stories to talk about. But to be really honest with you, if we just talk about really one story tonight and that's it, that'll be fine. I do have a couple of little ones as well that we could throw in at the end. But for now, we're going to welcome to the show someone who's kind of already been a feature on our show for 2 nights now, and that's Victoria Jakobs. And also joining Victoria Jakobs is Hannah Blake. Victoria and Hannah join us tonight. Hello, team, and thanks for being with us.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora. Just checking you can hear me.
Yep, we can. Hannah's having
Wonderful.
a couple of little internet issues. If you have to drop out and duck back in, Hannah, even if we're live, it's all good. No problems whatsoever. Now, Victoria, we've shown footage of you being assaulted at the Julian Batchelor meeting. And for people who don't know, Hannah, you are the organizer of the protest at that meeting. Is that fair?
I am one of the organisers. I organised but I didn't organise Mana Whenua. They are very competent and organise themselves. So
Right.
We were just there to support them.
Right. Okay. So you're one of the organisers, one of the people responsible for getting a protest out to that
Correct.
particular Julia.
I was
Batchelor
the
meeting.
one responsible for getting the information out on Twitter and to groups that weren't Mana Whenua.
Cool. All right. Well, look, there's a lot to talk about, and Victoria, I guess we're going to delve into the weeds as to what happened as well. But I wonder if a little bit of background might be good to start with, Chewy, and maybe even Hannah. Maybe you could start, because we've been talking about the Julian Batchelor meetings for a couple of months now. We featured a protest that happened up at Christchurch. Byron gave us a call after one of those, and we talked it through. I guess my first question is, why are you protesting them, and what are you attempting to achieve with protesting the Julian Batchelor meetings?
I mean, where do I start?
At the beginning.
The very beginning would be before I was born.
Okay.
Julian Batchelor has been a feature of the evangelical community for many years. He did the same sort of organising against the hero parades in the 90s, the precursor of the gay parades, pride parades in Auckland. He's an aggressive evangelist in the sense that he focused very much on conversion as a feature of his ministry. He has recently, due to the nature of our current politics, decided to reignite something that has always been around in evangelical circles, which is opposition to the full carry out of the treaty. And he's done this in a way that has incited a lot of fear in many communities, not just evangelical ones, but his contacts are primarily evangelical. And we have record of him saying things like, people are calling him up every week saying that they are buying firearms for the upcoming, essentially, race war or apartheid or whatever word he likes to use. And this is quite simply unacceptable. This is not how I was taught when I was growing up, to stand by your word, because we gave our word when we signed Te Tiriti. And this is an abuse and misuse of the power that he has in evangelical communities. And I am extremely sad to see my former communities, to see so many people fall for it. And so I can only speak for me and why I have decided to oppose him, but I know my sentiments are shared by many. And obviously, for the people who are targeted for tangata whenua, it is very much an opposition to directly targeted hate speech against them.
We've talked a little bit about Julian Batchelor a couple of times, because much like yourself, I have a background in that world. Talked about he was working with a group called Operation Jerusalem back in the day, which for kids of the 90s, you might have seen some of their tents and things at holiday camps. They do the children's program at holiday camps as a way to spread their word. I know lots of people who are involved with it. I know lots of good people who are literally there just to help look after kids and kind of show that side of their faith. And other people who used it, as you say, as an aggressive form of evangelism to convert people to his faith. But yes, he has a long history in that world. I'm surprised how you're describing him, only because I've been out of that world for quite a long time. He sounds still very active. I feel like when I would heard his name, I was like, oh, he was that guy that used to do things 25 years ago. But you're saying that he's still fairly well regarded and well renowned in that world, because the way you word it is he's got a lot of, you didn't use the word mana, but certainly influence. Let's say influence rather than appropriate the word mana for him. A lot of influence in that world that is coming into what he's doing now.
The evangelical circles were very much ignited, if not entirely set up, in the 1980s when he became first around. And those networks were established very firmly then, and you can still see the ramifications of that. And because he's tied in to such old networks, he has contacts and influence. So while I am unable to verify how many churches listen to his information, what I do know is that he's got enough contacts and circles and enough financial resource to make himself heard, and he knows how to use his channels effectively.
Wow. Chewy, want to jump in with anything, sir?
Yeah, well, that sort of segs in with when he was down here in Dunedin. We were quite surprised when his first venue was at Cargill Enterprises, which is very well regarded as a very community focused organization, and I was like, wow, why is this guy hosting it? And in my email communications with it became very clear to me that the guy behind Cargill Enterprises was in that evangelical circle as well. So I mean, that's where those contacts and links, and if you're well regarded in the community, it opens up doors and that sort of thing. I mean, he eventually bowed to public pressure to cancel his meeting there, but he attended the meeting later on when it found its third venue. So that certainly plays with how it happened down here as well.
Victoria, why are you involved? Why do you feel the need to be involved in these protests, specifically around the Julian Batchelor situation?
So I'm probably coming at this from quite a different angle. And listening, I actually did not know much about him. But what I do know is I know a lot about his messaging. And it seems like every election year about this time, the racist rhetoric really ramps up. So this year, I think I got a message through social media from Hannah and from others, that this protest was happening. And for me, it's pretty straightforward and simple that I, within myself, have to stand up for people who are my friends, my family, my neighbours, who are Māori and who are the victims of this. And if I don't stand up and voice my opposition to it, then I couldn't live with myself. So it's a very simple reason why. And I'm quite shocked at I shouldn't be shocked, because at the organised and persistent thread and activity of this. My perception of him in the short time I was in that meeting was that he is a narcissist, and he just wants his little troops. And I think, does the message matter? I'm not sure it does for him, as long as he has power. And I think probably at the end of the protest, he was escorted out by maybe 15 police. There was a human wall of police around him. And I reflected on that afterwards, and I think he would have enjoyed it. Makes him look like a big, powerful man with all these police there, while the little white woman inside got beaten up by his people with no police. But so my perception of the first experience I've had of him is that he's just a narcissist, and his message of hate is part of his vehicle for power.
And is that what you see as well, Hannah? A message of hate? I mean, especially because you have the knowledge and background in that evangelical world. I mean, some would say that the supposed central figure in that world, who is said to be the Prince of Peace, wouldn't want to have a lot to do with someone espousing hate. Bit of a juxtaposition there, but I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on that.
Christian nationalism, which, whether or not he acknowledges it, is the theological stance that Julian seems to ascribe to, is the kind of belief system where, like many different interpretations of the Bible, they've taken it along certain lines. And the lines are this: in order for a nation to be successful, it must be under the control of the Christian God. Anything that threatens that control, which in practicality is carried out by the people who identify themselves as authorities under the Christian God, is a threat and must be taken care of. And this is just one of the numerous ways that is dealt with. And it's not about Julian Batchelor. He thinks it's about him. It's not about him. This messaging has been rife throughout the community for years, and it will continue to be so. It is a consumer culture of fear and control, and it can be used for good, But unfortunately, I am seeing some very negative consequences coming out, which is why I do what I do.
Can I just segue into that? So in the meeting, he said we're at war, and he called himself a general. And I think that kind of rhetoric is exactly what you're saying, Hannah. He's using fear, and he's putting himself there as the savior that's going to lead the army into the war. So that actually is quite shocking.
I've seen a lot of that talk from him as well. You know, everything's a battle, a war, a struggle. We've got to get organised, all of that sort of stuff, that rhetoric.
The language of spiritual warfare is rife and has been rife for hundreds of years, and certainly for the last 40 in our particular subculture of Christianity. And it is generally meant in a non-violent sense, but my concern has always been and continues to be what happens when people take the language of spiritual warfare and then interpret it literally. And I am no longer confident that it is staying in the spiritual realm, and I'm very concerned. And Julian Batchelor is the type of person that I'm concerned is bringing it into the physical.
So here's a question for both of you, for Hannah and Victoria, and Chewy. You're all lovely people. If he's at war and he's a general, who's he at war with? Because when you're at war, you have to have an enemy. And how does that war get won in his eyes, do you think? Victoria?
So I actually, in these meetings, in this roadshow, he's at war with Māori, 100%. They may not be his only target, though, from what Hannah's saying. But my perception from the roadshow is it's Māori are his target. Yeah. And Hannah, you might answer the second part. I don't know.
So in his eyes, because if you're at war, you want to win that. What would winning that war look like to Julian Batchelor?
Well, I think that's a good question. I mean, there is no victory, is there? What would his victory look like? I can't even imagine. So I guess the anti-co-governance tour, I think a battle victory would be that co-governance is removed. But what's next?
Yeah, Hannah?
To put it in evangelical terms, he's at war with the forces of darkness. And the forces of darkness are whatever oppose their understanding of Christianity. So it's very fluid. But generally, it's anything that isn't under their control. They want a Christian nation. They want a Christian government. They want a Christian education system. They want complete control over society. And it sounds hilarious and it sounds laughable because Aotearoa is a very secular society, but this is what they want and this is how they are fighting it and this is how they have been doing it for years. And this is why things like, for instance, homeschooling is entirely unregulated because of these people fighting. And this is just one of the battles.
So in a non-secular analogy, then I would say he's at war with everyone who's not Julian or obeys Julian's rules. And then you start thinking, oh, who else in history has been like this? You know, I could drop a few names.
Yeah, it's great to have an enemy for all seasons, right? You can just keep the language the same, the tactics the same. You just swap out your enemy. Today it's Māori, and it seems to be getting some traction. As you mentioned earlier, Hannah, in the past it's been the gay community that he's gone after. It's I think it's dug out a really ugly. It's not new. It's always been there, right? But everybody's been kind of a little bit ashamed because they know they've got such shitty views. And when you get enough of them together, they're like, oh, maybe I'm not the only one that's a complete dirtbag. Everybody finds their community, right?
I wonder, and maybe this is my naivety, and maybe you could expand on this, Hannah, a bit, but So if this overall goal you're asserting is that a Christian nation, right? How does opposing co-governance take a step towards that? Or is it like a version, like a reverse version of anti-Semitism where it's always blame the Jews? Is this just always blame Māori? It's like always have a reason. So actually the co-governance thing is a byproduct. It just gives them a pulpit, literally, to attack Māori for their end goal.
A little of column A and a little of column B.
Okay.
It is always useful because of the racism and inequality in society. It's a useful wedge topic for them. But also, co-governance implies shared governance, and they don't want to share governance. And they consider the West to be a Christian culture, and they see anything that opposes Western culture as a non-Christian culture, and therefore part of the forces of darkness.
Yeah. No, really
so it's not so much white supremacy as it is Western supremacy, still tied in with white supremacy, but it is Western supremacy, and that is one of their sort of main themes throughout their efforts. And they do, I think everyone in life, except for a few, very few people, believe that they're doing the right thing. It's just that unfortunately it's doing a lot of harm to society, and even though people may believe they're doing the right thing, when it's incredibly harmful, it still needs to be shown for what it is.
Obviously there are a ton of people wanting to interact and are interacting. I thought, Chewy, I want to go on and show some of the footage from what happened in the actual meeting. Maybe what we should do now is get to a few of those messages, because if we don't, there'll be hundreds of them to try and go through at the end. But if there's any direct, if there's any direct questions, feel free to throw them in as well. If you ask a question, it doesn't mean it'll necessarily get asked, but you know, welcome. We always welcome when we're live streaming people to be a part of the conversation.
So first of all, I'm just gonna before I get to the questions and that sort of thing, we've just got a few comments that I think you guys would like to see. Michelle here says, "Thank you, Hannah. The tautoko for mana whenua and tangata whenua does not go unnoticed. We appreciate your activism and advocacy, I would imagine that is." Gareth here says, "Thanks for your bravery, Victoria. It's not easy being a dissenting voice." Thank you, Hannah and Victoria, for using your voices to speak out against this. I'm so proud of both of you and everyone involved with this. Yeah, and then we'll go into our first question from a regular of our show, RSJK. Could you ask Victoria if anyone actually trespassed her? In no way excuses the assault. I'm just wondering, I guess, if anyone actually did that very simple step.
Well,
that is such a great question.
Yeah,
and
because there's a process. If you're going to be trespassed, there's a process. They have to ask you to leave. You have to be given an opportunity to leave. There's actually a process. People can't just say, you're trespassing. There's a process to go through. So was the process followed?
So at the beginning of the meeting, Julian, before it kind of started and before he was introduced, he stood up and said, you know, I don't think there's anyone here to disrupt. I think we've selected people really well. But if you are here to disrupt, this is what will happen. You'll be asked to leave. And if you don't leave, he said that he was the temporary manager of the site. And therefore he had the authority to trespass someone, and that's what he would do. And then if the people didn't leave, he would get the police. They would get the police. So did anyone trespass me? No. No one did.
Right. Answered. Asked and answered,
Asked
Chewy.
and answered, yes. Very clear.
Great question.
I got a couple of other comments and then we can move on to the footage, Pat.
Sure.
One group is never the only target of fascists. They might start out with one group, but the in-group always gets smaller and smaller. Fascism is self-defeating in this way. And I think we sort of mentioned this last night, you know, when our friend in Germany started out. It wasn't all Jews. It was just a specific elite group of Jews. And
the elite
and
Māoris as well.
yes, in Julian's own words.
Yeah.
When I talk about Māori on the site, I am referring to a particular group of Māori, not all Māori. The group I'm referring to are what I call treatiest or elite Māori. So when I first saw that on his website, I was like, oh, yep, okay, I can see exactly what this is going to be. Because we've seen it before. The wheel turns.
Yeah. Can I just tap into that very briefly? So my family is of Jewish descent. And there's some language in Julian's kind of rhetoric that is similar to what happened to the Jews in the Netherlands. And I'm here today because my opa, my grandfather, was not Jewish enough. So there was a kind of a mathematical formula as to how Jewish you had to be before you were considered Jewish enough for the gas chambers versus being sent away to Germany for slavery. And I think this is coming through because he's talking about part Māori and he's these quantums and this elite Māori. It's like he's taken the book and just sort of put in a new word, Māori, instead of Jew.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I have the same story.
Yeah, that's what Chewy said last night. He said if you replace the word Māori with Jew and those things, it looks like it could be in 1936. Like that's the point.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else in the chat there, Chewy, before we get to this this footage and stuff?
Let's crack on.
All right. Welcome to ask questions or make comments, guys. As I said, no reason to think they'll definitely get asked of you, but put them in there and we'll see what we can do as we go through. Now, what I've actually done, guys, this is the footage that we've all seen. We've actually played this footage probably a couple of times this week, Victoria, already. But what I've actually done, based on something I think you said to me in the email, is that I've gone through and put subtitles on it. Because I've gone through very carefully, listened very closely to what's being said around you, and I've subtitled it. Okay. So now people can watch and listen and see what's being said. One of the more interesting things is what Julian Batchelor was saying from the front. Before we play it, Julian Batchelor told people to remove the whistle from you. Julian Batchelor told people to get you out. Julian Batchelor starts by saying get the police, which is what we're talking about for trespassing, but he very quickly descended into get the whistle off her and get her out, right? Yeah. So you'll see I've got Julian Batchelor's name and a whole bunch of things he was saying, and then I've got some of the rando other comments that were made on there as well. So I'll play it for you one time, and then we might come back and have a look at it, ask you about the specifics that came from this. So this is the footage with subtitles for 80% of the comments, the ones that I could hear, of you getting ejected from the event.
Touch me! Don't touch me! Don't touch me! You hit me!
So up until this point, he is doing what you said, Victoria. He's saying we have to get the police. So he's following that along. And then, of course, a little bit of ribbing from others start to come in as well. You're making a bit of a fool of yourself. You really are. You're making a fool of yourself, etc., etc. And there we go. Take the whistle off her.
Do not touch me!
You want to go to jail, lady?
Do not touch me as well! Leave me alone!
That's uncomfortable.
You shouldn't be here, lady. You were warned.
Excuse me, do not say that. Sorry, did you hear him say pull her pants down?
Don't touch me! Wait on the cops! Wait for the cops!
Legacy said pull her pants down.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
And that's the end of it. Yeah, it is a fucking hard watch.
That's a hard
Joey.
watch.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine what it's like watching for you watching that back, Victoria.
Yeah.
Well,
What does it feel like, Victoria? You watching that? What is it? What are you
it
going
brings
through?
up those feelings again, which frankly, I was scared before I even pulled out my sign. I feel sick, especially when that guy pulled my head back. But and I think I sort of said this on the radio. I feel deeply uncomfortable seeing it. I feel really uncomfortable and really conflicted about so many people seeing me vulnerable, scared, because I don't see myself as either of those things, and being assaulted. And the worst thing though is that my parents and my children have had to watch this, and it's been probably harder for them to watch than it has been for me.
Yes, no, I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. No one wants to see someone they love be treated so, so badly, and by a sort of I don't know, mob's not the right word, but no one helped me. No one, that's just really disappointing.
I tell you what I see in that as well, because obviously you're pretty isolated in there, and you must have known, you knew that going in. Right,
so yeah, I actually, I'm going to say I was a little bit naive, and I've learned from this. I've never done anything like this before, and I literally messaged one friend and said, I'm going in. Yep. And luckily, and so when I was in there the whole time, I thought I was alone. There was a guy who's who I do know, Jim, who has dreadlocks, who was in there for a while, but he was clearly targeted by them and ejected because of the way he looks. So when he had gone, I honestly thought I was completely alone in there. I didn't know I was being filmed. I don't even know the woman who was being filmed. And that is so frightening, to be the only person in that environment where you're being attacked by multiple people and no one there is helping or even saying stop. Yeah, so I mean, I did try and hold on to things to not be dragged out in the end. And in the end, when the man was pulling my trousers down and somebody said pull her trousers down, at that point, it went from fear to terror, and my thoughts were just get me out of here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hannah,
there's a weak quote that I remember is like, being brave isn't necessarily the absence of fear; it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I think for you going in there alone, you should be commended.
Well, I was shaky. Yeah. Shall I tell you about going in? Is that or not? Maybe not now.
Yeah,
okay.
No, please do.
So I decided to go in, and I sat in my car directly opposite the entry across the road, and there was people gathered already. I was quite early because I was thinking, how am I going to get in? What am I going to do? And I was concerned about the shame that I would feel in walking past the protesters and them looking at me thinking I was one of them. It was actually I was very nervous about, I don't want to be seen as a hater. And as I was sitting there, a man came up to me, and I can say who he is because I know who it was. He was one of the organisers. His name's Chris Barber. He walked up to me and said, "Are you here for the meeting?" And I said, yes. And I said, it's a bit intimidating, pointing to the entry. And he said, that's okay. I'm here to accompany people in. So I thought, there's no going back, Victoria.
Well, but also, obviously, as Chewy's been saying for the last few nights, there's only one way he could have identified you as a possible person coming in, and it's your skin colour.
It
and
is.
Probably, yeah,
Age.
we're all of a certain age.
Yeah.
Our ages.
Sure. Yep, I'm the right demographic.
Yeah,
and
so the
he
profiling.
actually he approached me. So I think there's been some discussion about it being a private meeting. It wasn't a private meeting. They welcomed members of the public. They may have had some people register, but he didn't ask me for anything. He didn't ask anything else other than, are you here for the meeting? And I said yes. So is that not a public meeting?
I think the private meeting thing is a little fig leaf that he's put in place after his initial meetings up north, where everybody turned up.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculously transparent.
Yeah. I absolutely know that I was invited in because I'm a white woman, white middle-aged woman, or 100%. Yeah.
Hannah, you were one of the people organising this. What are you thinking right now?
I was when I saw, because I have known Victoria for years, and I have always admired her. And when I saw who it was, I did break down, because if I had known, I would have put safety plans in place. And I did feel everyone has their own responsibility. That is what we take into this work, but I did feel responsible because I was the one who put the message out there. And this is the first event that I have been a major coordinator for in this kind of work. But I was very proud of her. And we immediately went into gear, making sure that the very brave thing that she did, that she had control over that story, and that she got it out to where she needed to get it to go, and that she was looked after as much as we were possibly able to. But it was extremely hard. I was heartbroken. But that is the reality of activism.
And I would say, if anyone is ever considering doing anything, please don't do it alone. Have people, even if it's someone there to record you, because thank goodness I told that one friend, because that one friend told one other person to go in there, and that was the woman that filmed it, who I didn't know and don't know, but it is because I told one person. I believe that my story is that not my story, that the record is there so that the police will hopefully do something about it, because when I walked out and said to the police I've been assaulted, there was just kind of looks of confusion, and I'm not sure how seriously I was being taken until somebody walked up and said to them, I've got footage, or first to me and then to them, I've got footage.
So this is one of the things that I wanted to ask. Oh, sorry, you go first, Hannah.
I'll very briefly, if you are local, if you're watching in your local Te Papiaoioi, to Palmerston North, and there's ever any of this kind of engagement again, please do reach out to me, because I'm a point of contact for people who will be able to. I can never promise safety, but we will promise to be there for you. So,
but even
in future.
Yeah, and I would say from having been in that situation, if I had known someone else was in the room that was on my side, I think I wouldn't have felt. I mean, I was terrified. I mean, would I have been less terrified? Maybe, because I don't know.
Anyway.
I'm looking, just for clarity for me and for people listening, because a lot of people would have thought that the person filming was a part of your crew. So that was a stranger to you.
Correct.
Was that the same lady, the person who got upset about them calling out to pull her pants down? Was that the same lady who was filming, and was that someone who wasn't associated? So in other words, she's gone, this is not acceptable. I've got the footage. She was actually, and there were other people in that meeting saying, wait for the police. I mean, that's why I subtitled it, to do things, let's say, the correct way, for you disturbing them as your protest.
Yeah.
So obviously she's been gone, I don't want to have any part of this. I've got the footage and got it through to you, and that's where it's come from.
Yeah. So as I said, she is, we have a mutual friend. I had not met her, and I didn't know she was going to be there. I had not met her beforehand. I only met her that as she was out, when she came out and told me, and I only know her first name. So it wasn't part of any, stupidly, frankly, wasn't part of any plan. A smart activist, a less naive one, would perhaps have put some of those things in place.
Well, I guess she wasn't questioning, because Julian Batchelor himself was saying she should be filmed. So
there was a lot of people filming.
Well, there must be more footage out there.
Yeah.
I want to go through one more thing, because Victoria, one of the things we did on Monday night was we talked a bit about this. Then on Tuesday night, we responded to the melee we got on Twitter about this, talking about assault, and people could remove it. It was a private meeting. And tonight, I actually want to just add to this conversation with one more thing. All right, let me just do one more thing. This is from what you've sent us. So there was a moment in this overall you being removed, which I've zoomed in on, because it's quite far back. And this is when you are actually being dragged out of the room. I want people to look at how you're being handled and what's happening. The gentleman you can see there in the jeans and grey top and shirt, how he's holding your arm and what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming it's okay for me to show the photo you sent me, because that's why you sent it to me. Yes. I haven't actually asked you that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is, have a look at, this is the exiting. This is the exiting, getting dragged out of the door. Now, I've actually got it twice because I wanted to give people an opportunity to see it. So this is it, and it's slowed down a little bit. This is you being dragged out of the room. And this is the photo you sent me. There's the still frame. So there's a still frame zoomed in even more of you getting dragged out. And then this is the photo you've sent me. Remember, we've been talking about an assault in some, police places, not states, but, jurisdictions. To have an assault, there has to be need for medical care. There has to be, an injury, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is your fucking arm.
Yeah, that's correct.
After what we've just seen. Now, I'm assuming this bruise at the top by your wrist is basically exactly how you were dragged out. So for people, and I've been reading comments as they're going past on the on the thing today about, Julian Batchelor was crying on the platform today. And we've likened this a little bit, not in context, but what we've done this week, and we've said, if you consider the kind of tomato sourcing of Posey Parker to be an assault, then this is too. And Chewy said last night the difference between someone being injured or touched and having a dry cleaning bill is very different. It's not just touched. This is damage to your body. We can see it. It's based on what they've done to you. I think if anyone is sitting on the fucking fence about this, look at the damage that these men did to you as they assaulted you and dragged you out. Yeah.
Can I say that's not the worst damage? So the worst damage is actually to my teeth, which I think the potentially most long-term damage will be my teeth, because when they were trying to wrench the whistle out, they've caused trauma in my teeth, which are still sore, both top and bottom, but particularly the bottom. And I have been to a dentist who said, we're just going to have to watch and wait. I can't bite anything. And he said, if tooth trauma, the nerve will just die over time. So we just have to wait and see. He's taken x-rays and we'll just see what happens. The other thing is, the police I had to undergo the incredibly humbling and humiliating experience of being photographed like an exhibit with those bruises on my arm, and I haven't shown you a photo of my teeth because it's too much. Everybody has what's too much, but I had to pull my mouth down and let them take photos of my bruised gums and my teeth. And if anyone has ever been subjected to violence, been the victim of violence and had to go through this process, my heart goes out to them, because that was the first time that I actually really cried. And the police were very kind and very gentle, but it was, like another assault. Yeah. If that makes sense, an emotional one.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And of course, now everyone wants to know bringing charges against those people who assaulted you.
So that's really interesting. So I have made a statement I have not. I tried to register online, send some photos in online, and I got a response on the 105 saying I had to go in person. So I went in on Sunday, and they took photos. And then I came back the next day because I had to go to work after that, which was stupid, but I had to. And then the next day, I went in and made a statement. Today, what did I go in and do? Gave them the names, 2 names of people who have been identified, but no one who is involved in this, I don't know what they call it, a case, has contacted me yet. And what was Wednesday night? No one has offered. No one from from the police has either one told me what's going to happen, or what may happen, what that time frame is, or offered me any kind of support.
After this, Victoria, we'll chat and we'll make sure that we'll get you some more support, okay?
Yeah. I mean, I feel I have had so much affy from so many people, but I just think in terms of what happens, I don't know. So will charges be okay? So the other thing is, I'm not just a bit naive and a bit maybe feisty. I am very determined. I'm a very, very determined woman. So I will do what I can because I believe no one should be assaulted. I don't believe in violence, and I think I just want to hold these people to account. They need to be held account for their actions.
Your whole community will be with you.
Because if people, it's a bit like children. If they get, if they get away with, if they do something and they get away with it, they're going to do it again, right? But these are adults, and particularly the man that dragged me out. These are adults that acted. I call it impunity. I don't know what the word really is, but they acted with kind of impunity and felt that it was okay to physically assault a woman, and multiple people did. So what's next? Unless they're held to account. Yeah.
Ironically,
I will also be making a WorkSafe complaint to the person who was the temporary manager of the facility, because he did not follow his own safety protocols.
Yeah, there could be an OSH situation there, couldn't it? Occupation safety and health.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there will be a WorkSafe complaint. I'll be doing that next week because this week is just crazy. But I've really been thinking about what by, and he is clearly stating at the beginning of footage that I have about what will happen, and in the video as well, what will happen. And then he changes his mind and just tells them to get me. And
I'll give you that video that I've subtitled. I'll probably put it out on Twitter after the show. And I've missed a few things, but I went through very carefully. I've got good equipment here to boost the background noise and that. And I was just thinking, you've said it so much more clearly than I was thinking about the behaving like children. I did find it particularly ironic when one lady called out, "This is not how adults behave," because I did actually think quite unclear who she was talking to, which she's saying those of us who are sitting here, this is not how adults behave. It was, but I think you've just said it in a much clearer way than that.
Hey, the other thing I would like to say is with my WorkSafe complaint, also the people, Rose City Aquatics, CLM, who are the company that managed the pool, and Palmerston City Council will be named in this, and I will just see how far it goes, because everybody ducks for cover in these situations and says, we don't take the bookings, we don't manage it. If you don't have a policy in place, then that's not actually in health and safety. You can't say, oh, we didn't have a policy, so it's not our fault. You actually doesn't matter, and in fact, not having a policy is worse. So yeah, they'll be certainly. I'll certainly try and do what I can to make them at least think.
I think this has been a surprising wake up for a bunch of councils and community groups, because it's very clear that he's either by omission or just the people that are booking these venues, they're not telling the venue organizers or the hosts or whatever what the meeting actually is. I saw most recently that it was described as a preppers meeting. Down here in Dunedin, the second venue was a scout hall, and it was just like, oh, can we hire the hall for the night? Yeah, sure, no worries. Contact details. Don't need to know what it's about. And I think for a lot of community groups, it's a bare minimum, really. Ask what it's for.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up with one thing, and it's been a great conversation, an important conversation. I feel like this week we've done some conversations that have been quite important, and one of the conversations we had last night was based on something that Brett Weinstein had a revelation of, that some of my friends are in Nazi Twitter. I don't understand how that's happened. What are they doing over in Nazi Twitter? Is it that potentially they're Nazis? And so we've been talking a bit, guys, this week about people on the right, but certainly people in certain sectors of community at the moment having to come to the realization that the views they're espousing, the positions they're taking, are being supported by literal Nazis. And I say literal Nazis because that's how Brett Weinstein described them last night, his definition. He was talking about Nazi Twitter as a place where SWAT stickers aren't seen as a bad thing. So that's our yardstick for using the word Nazi tonight. And we're challenging, I guess, people who are sitting somewhere on the right, and we're talking politics, this doesn't necessarily need to be a political conversation, but in certain sectors, whether it's anti-mandate, anti-COVID, anti-co-governance, alt-right, whatever it is, that they have people, Speak Up for Women, Free Speech Union, these kinds of people, they have supporters who are not just turning up inadvertently to their rallies, but who are supporting the views of what they're saying and putting them out there as their own views. I don't know about you guys, I probably do, but if I was having literal Nazis go, Pat, agree with everything he says, I would probably want to question what I'm saying. So this is the conversation we've been having. You can jump in now, Hannah. I see you want to say something, and then I'll get to my actual point.
No,
Okay,
I'm good. I completely agree with you. I would like to say something right at the end, but you keep going.
Because what I was going to do is just bring up that some of the people who assaulted you, probably I'll say in this instance, allegedly assaulted you, because it's a court that has to decide. That would be the only reason I'd say it.
You can say allegedly, but yeah. I can say that they did. Yeah.
I think people are pretty clear that
hands on.
Yep. I'm pretty clear in my mind what it is. It appears to be, but from a legal point of view, that there has been a Nazi Action Zealandia element amongst the people that assaulted you. So we talked about Julian Batchelor last night and having literal Nazis in his in the world that supports his views, and there were some of them there at this meeting, and there was one of them who was alleged to have assaulted you, Victoria. Shall I bring up Dr. Taunui's post? I probably should. This is on Twitter. I guess I have to say from a legal point of view, this is an allegation at the moment. You can speak to this, Victoria, you were there, but this is the allegation that's made. There are two other people who I would call private citizens who I'm choosing not to name here, but this person is allegedly, Hamish McGregor is allegedly someone who is involved in this world. It's a political area. He's a public figure because of his association. And this is the part of the crew that was part of the people who I understand assaulted you. Now, you can speak to that, Victoria, whether it's inaccurate, accurate, you don't know. But this is what's going around Twitter at the moment. And these people have been, quote unquote, outed.
Yeah. So that man, the face there, is the man that grabbed me, that pulled the chair out from under me, that grabbed me by the leg, that pulled my trousers down, grabbed me by the arm and the foot and whatever else, and dragged me out of the room. He also, when he had dragged me outside, snatched my cell phone from my hand and chucked it at the concrete ground, and it bounced under the fence and ended up on the other side of the fence. That is the man. Yeah. Yes. And do you know, when he was standing there, I don't know if you've got the photo, but all of that filming, by the way, he shouldn't have bothered throwing my phone, because I did a terrible job. I was so terrified. I got nothing. But I did take a photo afterwards when the police were talking to him. And I looked at that photo, and this was before this information, and I looked at him and I thought, he looks completely different from everyone else in the room. And I honestly, I thought I don't know, maybe it was his jacket or his boots. Perhaps it was his, what the police told me. I couldn't say steel cap boots. I had to say workers' boots. I thought he's a Nazi. Even before this all happened, I thought I don't know why. Maybe because of the fact that he just looked unrepentant when he was talking to the police. I don't know.
So the man who also pulled out the chair there,
Yeah.
I'm just looking at his clothing,
Yep.
is also the man that dragged you out by the arm.
Yeah, that's correct. And he also, obviously it's not filmed because it was outside, but he snatched my phone because he must have thought I'd filmed it all. Little did he know, I got nothing.
That Julian Batchelor told everyone to film it. So
They did. But they would release their edited highlights, which only probably, would show nothing. I don't know.
So that's another crime against your personal property. And you
Correct.
mentioned to me this afternoon that there might be another medical situation that you haven't had checked out, but you might have had a slight concussion as well.
Yeah. I've had concussion 2 times before, and it was exactly the same feelings. So that night I had a headache. I had to go to work the next day, and I was working the next day. The headache continued. I felt nauseous. And look, I couldn't get in to see my doctor, and I'm now, the headache's gone. I'm feeling okay. So I may have had a minor concussion, but I can't confirm that from a medical perspective. But having had it twice before, I'm pretty sure I did. And that's possibly from the head wrench.
Right.
I don't know. Could have been anything, though, because there was a lot of stuff going on when I was on the ground as well. I don't know.
Hannah, you said you wanted to say something sort of at the end of this conversation. With that, you go for it, mate.
Yeah, okay. I just have a few concluding comments. I will try not to take too long. First of all, I just wanted to say to tangata whenua that everything that we did and that we were that night, it was in support of you. And
100%.
You were leading
100%.
this, and we were there to support your voice and to add ours to it. And I value all the support that you gave that night. You were incredible, as you always are, and I have so much to learn. Victoria, you were so brave. I have admired you for years, and I wish I could have done more to help you, but we've got you. The entire community has got you. All you need to do is reach out and ask, and we will help. And that goes for anyone that gets attacked by these kinds of people. We will always do what we can if you reach out to us.
Can I just add to that, Hannah? Sorry, just what you're saying there. And I guess I want this to be really clear, because although this horrific thing happened to me, that was 30 seconds. 30 seconds that I was a target, a direct target. And I think at the moment in particular, for this group, but for racism every day, Māori are the victim of this every day, whether it's actual physical violence or it's verbal violence or it's structural violence. So, that's why I did it. I mean, and I think it's important not to, it is a big deal, and it's a big deal that happened to me, but the bigger issue is what we're talking about, aren't we, really? The bigger issue.
Absolutely. Okay. Finally, I would like to take the opportunity, in case there are any members of the evangelical community listening to this, and I would like to address a comment to them with love from the community that raised me. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of love and a spirit of power and a sound mind. And you need to really search your hearts, because up and down our country, the country that you love as well as we do, there are people seeking to grow fear and division. And they are very clever at sounding like they know what they're talking about, but all that it brings about is violence and you can see this here in front of you now, and you need to search your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to really think about who you were listening to and whether you were responding out of love or out of fear. And that underpins everything that I do. It is love and joy in the people. Thank you.
Yep.
Well said.
I don't think we've got too much more to add to that, Joey, unless you want to get into a couple of the comments to wrap up, and then we'll sign off for the night.
Before I get to the comments, I want to
Thanks,
say
Anna.
a couple of things. Julian's still got some dates. You'll notice he's been pretty cagey with them. If anybody feels inspired to go along and have a frank exchange of views, a couple of things that I would illustrate. The lessons that we're talking about today is the power of the buddy system.
Yes.
Don't go alone.
Yep.
Maybe
Bring a
communicate
friend.
with. Maybe communicate with other groups that are planning to do the same. They'll be active on Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing. Anti-fascist organisations have been very prominent throughout the major centres. The other thing I would say is, remember, if you have the privilege of being someone that can pass and get into one of these meetings, remember that the reaction that you might inspire from that group, it might be directed at you, but it also might be directed at someone else. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about mana whenua groups and that sort of thing that are outside, that aren't allowed to come in, you don't want to stir something up that's going to backfire on those groups. So work together, talk together. It's solidarity that is going to get this done. I would like to think that every time Julian has put on a meeting, it has not been unopposed. But yeah, sign up for his mailing list, register, and see if you get an invite.
There were beautiful scenes tonight. I think they're in Havelock North in a private residence, and there's singing, and it's actually quite joy. It's kind of this calm joy as people sing songs.
The other thing I would say is direct action takes different forms as well. You don't have to be down on the front lines with the argy-bargy or blowing a whistle or that sort of thing. You could be sending emails to the venues that he does name. You could be communicating with these groups to make sure they know who they've booked the hall for. You can do a lot without putting your body on the line as well. So it's all valid.
Can I support that? Because if one thing that this, or many things this experience has taught me, but one of them is the amazing work that random people I don't know where have done around this one particular issue. And so don't feel, I've had people say, I wouldn't be so brave, but it's actually whatever you do has value, and it's no less than whatever anyone else is doing. So value what you can contribute.
Yeah.
So we'll put up a couple more comments. What have we got here? Emma mentions Aotearoa Liberation League, very active on this. They've got some great breakdown videos of exactly what Julian's doing, what his background is, and what his aim is. Pointing out that we have forced him underground and he can't advertise where he's having these things or what time they even are. Gina here is pointing out that the Remuera Club has cancelled him.
Wow.
So he'll be scrambling around for another venue there.
That's big.
That is a big one. Calvin, who has been very prominent, making sure that this is a known thing. Feel proud, Victoria. You've helped spark a nationwide conversation and assisted in getting some of his future bookings cancelled.
I have to thank Calvin. Calvin's been amazing.
Yeah, and I also would agree. He has, among others, been one of the people that has been the most consistently informed and has an integrity of information that I really trust. I recommend that people follow along with what he says.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's all the comments that I've got, Pat.
Cool.
Hey, we're done for the night, guys. Thank you so much for being a part of the show tonight, Hannah. Thank you also for kind of trusting us, because we're just a couple of buffheads from Dunedin who don't really know what we're doing. So thank you for being a part of what we're doing. Victoria, I also want to sort of apologize to you, Victoria. I thought as I was playing that clip, I'm like, this is not going to be easy for you. So thanks for being brave again tonight to come and talk and to watch it and to go through it again. I noticed the word PTSD coming a few times across the chat. Like, hopefully you're not worse after this conversation rather than you were before this conversation. So thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing. And thanks for, I don't know, how do we say it, Chewy? Honouring us to be here tonight and allow us to help tell your story and
absolutely.
get the word out there.
Trusting us.
Yeah.
Strong together. Strong together.
We have to. We're all together. We look after each other. We keep each other safe.
Yeah.
And that's us done for tonight, guys. We'll be back tomorrow
Modi
night,
order.
9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Thank you again, Hannah. Thank you, Victoria. And thank you, everyone, for joining in tonight and being a part of what we do. We will see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Stay safe, everyone. Remember, tomorrow night, bring a friend. Hooroo.
Ka kite.